I went into the House of Lords after a lifetime of absolute madness and chaos that started the moment I was born into a world that was not adult. I didn't encounter adults until much, much later in life. What I mean is I never encountered people who behaved like adults. There's a big difference between somebody who reaches the age of 21 or 18 and being given the key to this, that and the other. That doesn't mean to say you're an adult. And actually, unfortunately, there are not many people who act in an adult sort of way in the kind of poverty that I come from. So I went into the House of Lords as a crossbencher, which means that nobody can tell me what to say or what to do. I can vote for the government, I can vote against the government, I can put forward arguments myself. In fact, I've got a bill going through at the moment, well, I'm trying to get a bill through, which will change the way that people get credit. Because I don't know if you know, the poorer you are, the more expensive you have to pay for your credit. The poorer you are, the more expensive it is to just live. If you're a homeless person or a person who's around looking for a job, then you will pay through the nose if you have a phone. God bless you if you can afford a phone, if you've got a phone. Or you use electricity or gas, you will pay much, much more than if you're, comfortable and on mortgages and all that stuff. And what I'm trying to do is change to get the credit rating of the poorest people raised so that they can encounter some of the wonderful things that we in the comfortable classes, where we don't have to pay through the nose for our credit. So that's one of the things I'm involved in. I really want to break open the predictability of failure that carries on, not just in the UK, but throughout the world. With a vast amount of energy in the world goes into emergency responses to crises that actually should never have happened. You have this incredibly mad world where 80%, these are my figures, I just picked it up out of, about 80% of all intervention into the lives of people in need and in poverty, 80% is trying to get people through emergencies. Not get them out of poverty, but to make them a little bit more comfortable. We had the situation 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, where there was this band, what's his name, Bono, and all these people, Band Aid. And they raised a shed load of money that went to Ethiopia because people were dying like flies because of the poverty, and added to by the malnutrition, added to by the crop failures, by the famine. And they went there. And they spent a shed load of money, and 20, 30 years later, Bob Geldof went back and cried because he could see that the money had not been used to transform people and utilize their skills and their abilities to get out of poverty, but were used in a sense to kind of cement them. People were still in refugee camps. The same as in Palestine. People are in refugee camps in Lebanon. There are refugee camps all over the place. And yet, most poor people live as refugees, even in this country. They're not in camps. But what they are is they're given a certain amount of money, but they're never given the money to transform and redeem themselves and get educated and go to Oxford, Cambridge and Harvard and all these other places. I went into the House of Lords very, very consciously, aware of the fact it could be the biggest trap of my life. In the sense that I could be patted on the back by the establishment and said, "We've got you at last. We've been after you for decades and now we've got you." While the other people who really are concerned about the poor and concerned about life and concerned about the gap between rich and poor, look, John Bird's sold out at last. And I've got many, many people who pat me on the back and other people go, "Up yours." Or whatever, I think the international, what is that? We only do that because, it was something done against the French to prove that we still had 2 fingers so that we could fire our longbows at them at Agincourt. Anyway. So I went in, carefully, made all the applications, and they took an enormous risk on me. Absolutely. Because you don't get people who in their maiden speech, first of all, the maiden speech was 3 times longer than it should be. It was only 15 minutes, but it's only supposed to be about 5 minutes. You're supposed to go in and say, "Hello, I'm John Burton, I'm a very nice chap. Goodbye. You'll see more of me." And I went in and said, people ask me, "How did I get into the House of Lords?" And I said, "I got into the House of Lords by lying, cheating, and stealing." You can watch it, it's beautiful. I think Lord Byron and me, I think it was about 1818, I'm always bigging myself up because I'm a terrible show-off, unfortunately. I blame my mother. I think my father, actually I just found out my father might not be my father, so where am I? I'm quite happy with that. As long as I'm still alive. But Lord Byron went into the House of Lords, and the first thing he did is he slagged off the establishment. Because at that time, what they were doing was they were persecuting and killing people who were going around wrecking machines because of the mechanization of farming, which was meant that lots of people were being laid off. So what happened was he went in, and he's always been a bit of my inspiration. I thought, if we're getting Byron, Lord Byron, B-Y-R-O-N, Byron, Lord Byrd, B-Y-R-D. Anyway, so I'm almost there, so I'm just joking. But the point is, I went in and I said, I'm there because of I'm there because I was a liar, cheater, and a stealer. I was born into post-war London, 1946, into a place called Notting Hill, which was the worst slum in Britain. It had the highest infant mortality rate than anywhere else in Britain. If you wanted to make sure your children died of birth, oh sorry, I realised that the flies under. Excuse me. That's what happens when you get to 71. Unintentional, I assure you. That's the kind of crude person I am. Anyway, so if you want to kill your children, move into Notting Hill in 1946. The highest infant mortality rate than anywhere else in the UK. And my mother, God bless her, God rest her soul, and my father, or the man who lived with, they had 6 boys, and 4 of them were born in Notting Hill. And we lived in a house where we shared a toilet with 8 other families. If you wanted to have a crap, you had to book it. You had to fill in the form and say, I want a crap in 2 days' time. I'm not joking. Well, I'm joking. Every West smelt of urine. Everywhere smelt of poverty. There were rats. Now this was about 2 miles from the epicenter of the British Empire. Buckingham Palace was a bus ride away. And Houses of Parliament were not much further. The epicenter of this enormous empire, which was converting itself into a commonwealth, was just down the road. I could walk there in half an hour. And I was born into this place, and there were no adults, because my father would get his job. You know, he worked in the building trade, and on a Saturday night he would spend circa 42% of it in the local pub. He had an arrangement with the barman. He gave the barman money, and the man gave him an endless supply of very watered down beer until he could just about manage and then go home and fall asleep, trying to find a way of coping with poverty, having all these children. And my mother used to join him on occasions until she had too many children. As I said, poverty was in the bones. Homeless at 5. We ended up being thrown out, came home from school one day. How long have I got? I don't mean, you know, in terms of my longevity. How long have I got? Someone's got to give me some time. Because I could go on forever. We could do this all day. Sorry? Oh, I might as well give up. I'm not even there. Anyway. So we were homeless. I came home from school. I was brought up a London Irish Catholic. Was taught to hate black people, Jews, Indians, and English people, because we were from Ireland. The only good people in the world were Irish. I don't know if you come from a community, if you come from a really select group, you will see that only you are important in the world. You know, if you support a football team, only that football team really cuts ice. Anyway, so I better rush on. Anyway, so at the age of 7, put into a Catholic orphanage and brought up by a Sisters of Charity. Came out of that at the age of 10. Absolutely mad! Starting fires, smashing up, fighting teachers. A complete and utter nutter. Horrible, daubing swastikas and burning stations, arson and stealing and fighting with other boys and hitting them with bricks rather than punching, rather than do that, just boom. Being a horrible person. Made horrible by the age of 10, on probation from the age of 10 to the age of 15, all this sort of stuff. It was all carefully orchestrated. It was social engineering of a particular kind. So all the cocktail parts that made up John Anthony Burke, screwball, and about to become very, very expensive to Her Majesty's government. Hence, when I said I lied and cheated and stole in order to get into the House of Lords, if I had not entered the prison system, of the custodial system at a very, very early age, I wouldn't have got educated. My brothers, God bless them, hard-working, working-class guys who just went on and on and on. My father, my mother, but me, I was never going to work. I was going to steal my way to the top. And I developed skills and abilities. I learned to read and write in a boys' prison at the age of 16. I learned all sorts of things. So, if you screw up under capitalism, then what they do is they have to do something about it. And often they end up spending more money than if you went to the top public school in Britain. I was in an institution once that cost 2.5 times more than if they put me into Eton, which, as you know, is the top British public school. Isn't that weird? The poorest getting almost a Rolls-Royce service. So I'll skip over. And got to the age of 15, was a horrible, nasty, snidey little git, racist. Then I got put away. I got 3 to 5 years for receiving money under false pretenses. There's a lot of people in the world who think I'm still doing that. I'm supposed to laugh. Good, thank you. You didn't really need a prompt. And the thing is, when I was banged up, having run away and smashed up the car and all sorts of stuff, when I was banged up, I fell in love with drawing and painting. So when I left at nearly the age of 18, I had this enormous portfolio. And what I'd done was I'd done something that poor people are often deprived of doing. Especially in UK, we have a particular kind of problem with poverty over here. It's like the welfareisation of poverty. We don't allow the poor to grow and flourish. We just believe in giving them just enough money to last through the day. We don't believe in social opportunity, we believe in social insecurity. Anyway, and I put an enormous amount of effort. My sweat equity was in this enormous portfolio. So when I came out, I got a place at art school. And I was a genius. Absolutely. I'm still one of the greatest undiscovered artists. If any of you can get hands on one of my 50 to 60,000 pound paintings, I'll accept 50 quid. Anyway, went to art school. Got in with the middle class. Found they were actually thicker than me. They weren't as bright as me. They weren't as clever as me. They weren't as insatiably curious as me. Because they just had this kind of education, which was like a ladder that took them up and up and up. That's what I think is brilliant when you get young people going and living with people in tremendous crisis and seeing and smelling the shit in the piss and realising how terrible it is to be in poverty because there's too many easy routes for some people. I've invented 2 new games. Have you ever heard of snakes and ladders? Have you? I've invented 2 new games. One's called Snakes and one's called Ladders. And actually, so many people in life, they only play the snake game. And some people play the ladder game. There are people who just get there and you think, how did you manage it? It's like, well, my mum, you know, where I was born, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so we won't work. Then I got into trouble again and I fell back into the underclass. I got married, I met a young woman, had a baby. Then she got rid of me because she found out that she couldn't get me to work. And I was always going around with Social Security. She said, please, give me money. And they wouldn't give it to me. Because back in those days, in the 60s, they didn't give you Social Security. Or very little. And then the police were after me because I kept doing things wrong. And then, one day, minus a wife, minus a child, I got the train to France. I went on my brother's passport. I went on his birth certificate, which meant I got a passport. And my brother, who never left the country, was picked up for shoplifting in France. Stealing bottles of whiskey. You come in and sit down. Take one of the front seats, because it's really brilliant. I don't know why. They've got this kind of hierarchy, reserved. Who for? Look, it's Harry Potter here with all these mates. And we can't see them, because I'm sure he's very Harry Potter, isn't it? I went to France. I immediately, 1967, it was just about the time when the French students and they, you know, there was a big kind of, what they call a Soissons wheat, which was the next year. It was all in preparation, punch-ups, fights, Che Guevara murdered by American imperialism in Bolivia and all that sort of stuff. And I met a very, 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 very beautiful young haute bourgeois Marxist. I mean, she had this enormous piano in her living room. She was a student at the Sorbonne. I mean, if you ever really meet those really, really posh revolutionaries, you think, why do you want to throw this away? I mean, I wish I had it. Solve the revolution. Anyway, then we were talking about the crisis. I was selling papers. I was selling papers on Champs-Élysées. I got myself a little job, got myself a room. And we started talking about the crisis. And she said, you know, the crisis, Jean, is this problem. You know, the problem is, capitalism and all that. And I said, no, it's not. I said, it's the black people and the Jews and the Arabs and all those sorts of people. They're the cause. She goes, boom, boom, you dirty piece of imperialist sheet. She never saw it. You piece of sheet on the foot. How did she describe it? A piece of sheet on the toe of capital. Or something. And I was astonished. I thought, I've got to keep this beautiful girl. I better find the words. So I was a sexual opportunist. But after 3 months, I was so radicalized by this process of osmosis that I at the age of 21, turned into this revolutionary international Marxist. I describe myself as a Marxist, Engelist, Leninist, Trotskyist. A meltist, if you take the initiative. I was melting capitalism. And I spent the next 20 years trying to destroy capitalism. In my little revolutionary cell, I came back to England, and I was so vehemently anti-racist then. Are you all right? You can have a drop on my water. I became, one of those people who give up cigarettes. Don't you start smoking, it's very, very bad for you. You've just done it for 50 years or something. And I became this really pain in the arse, anti-racist. And whenever anybody said anything anti-Semitic or anti-Arab or, anti-Palestinian or something, so people stopped inviting me to their dinner parties. And you then know you've lost it. So I've been through poverty. And if you actually live, and I always say that this is the way I look at society. I look up the dressing of society. It's a pretty good place to be sometimes. You see what people are wearing. Anyway, so that's where I look at poverty. I look at it from below up. And I notice all these people doing all wonderful things for the poor. But one thing they're not doing for the poor is giving the poor the opportunity of getting out of poverty. 80% of money that they're spending in the world on the problem of poverty doesn't get people out of poverty. I saw my wife and my children was a devout ex-Catholic, I could say this. And I go into the House of Lords, and I'm immediately introduced to all the people who want me to go and back this bill and do this and help there and that. And I said to them, look, you're doing a fantastic job of trying to get the poor through the day, the week, the month, or the year. Sorry, you do that. There's millions of you. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and dismantle poverty. I'm going to try and prevent poverty. I'm going to try a prevention alliance across all the parties, in all of the shires, in all of the constituencies. I am not going to accept for one moment that the puerile system where beautiful people like yourself, young people, are corrupted by an intellectual crisis around poverty. There are, do you know, in the world, all the answers are there. I was in Kibera. I met a group of young Muslim women in Kibera, building in Kibera, which is the largest shanty town in Africa. And what are they doing? They're building houses and they're giving education to children. And when I say to them, why are your children so well behaved and why are your children so good-lookingly healthy? And the mothers say, we never put anything in their mouths which is bad for them. For two reasons. One, we can't afford it. And the other is because we love our child. I tried to get an organisation. I was living on the largest housing estate in South London at the time. And you go into the local, you go into the doctor's surgery, and then they can shut up! And they'd be smoking, shut up there, you! To their children. Completely screwed up by consumerism and by the distortions that happen when you give people a handout, not a handout. I lost touch with these people, but I tried for quite a while. I wanted to do it. We work in South Africa, we work in all sorts of places. We do something very simple. We give the poor the chance of making their own money because we believe very, very strongly that the poor themselves have to do their own growing, have to do their own development. And if you give them handouts, then what you do is you postpone the day when they have to do it for themselves.